Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Harebrained Games. Today we're going to do a review of a long awaited game called Hogs of War, the miniatures game, by Paul D. Allen and James Faulkner. What is it about, you say? Well, it's adapted from the classic PlayStation title Hogs of War from 2000. That's right, 22 years ago. Yup. So you play as one of four factions, recruit planes, tanks, and automobiles. Yeah, like it's 1 to 4 players, 60 to 90 minutes. Nah, I don't think so. I think it's a little longer than that. But anyway, let's get into play an example and show you how it works. Hogs of War. Well, let's see what's inside this box. I'm actually going to show you a game in progress. You're going to get the idea. Every unit, every side, and there are 4 sides, and they come in mighty containers filled. Everybody gets a ton of stuff for their own nefarious and bacony purposes. Is going to get a little army. You get grunts, you get engineers, orderlies, snipers, bombardiers. You get your choice, a veritable cacophony of different units that you're going to place on the board. You also get your own base for base building, and these little Tetris-like pieces, when you add them each turn, you're going to get to add another one, or you could destroy one if you didn't do a good job of playing Tetris. And then you can open them up and open up opportunities. Like in this case, if we can get the focus right, this is going to give you the ability to employ an additional 2 tanks that you can put onto the battlefield, but it's going to cost you some swill. And swill is the currency, so it's definitely, trust me, it's a swill a minute. Alright, and then you have opportunities for planes, trains, and automobiles, etc. You've got airships, so you got a bunch of airship parts that you can put together so that you can put out your big dirigible. It's kind of like a slow, meaty, mighty powerhouse on the battlefield. Lots of upgrades. Every player is going to get an opportunity to have upgrades applied to their units. Each upgrade is based on some sort of like ground vehicle. Add something here, and they all add special abilities beyond those of mortal men. Then you have a bunch of different, well, components and pieces. You've got damage counters. You've got action counters, like, because actions are, well, they're sausages. But anyway, then you get this big map. In the deluxe edition, not only do you get the big map, but you also get a neoprene version of it. I have not set up the neoprene version. I'm using the basic version here. I do like the neoprene version. And also, when you have these deployables, you can actually put them out. You get these nice minis instead that make it a little, make your battlefield a little brighter and a little more 3D. And that's it. It doesn't sound like a lot, but believe me, it's a lot. You also get dice. There's different dice for melee, ranged, and explosive. Those will come into play later. And then lots of tiles. So the battlefield has lots of double-sided tiles, a la Memoir 44 style that you can lay out. This is the basic intro. And then, of course, you get the initiative coin. Oh, this is shiny metal. This is like piratey metal coin goodness. So anyway, now let's get into an example of play. So I'm going to get into an example of play, but I'm going to do it a little bit differently. This game is vast. It's spectacular in its scope. And so rather than give you the boring first turn, I've actually got a game in progress. We're about on turn 4. And so I've already got units on the maps that I can basically give you a little bit better of an idea of what's going on, because there's a lot going on. We're going to start with the how you win, and how you win is victory points. Now there's a campaign guide. There is the rule book. I didn't show you that. And then there's a campaign guide with have all the little campaigns. This is the one we're playing now. It gives you a little information, primary objectives, team scoring, additional player setup, etc., etc. The idea in most of the Hamburger Hill. Oh, I love puns. King of the Swill. Yeah. All right, and then each one has a little bit different kind of how you win, how you start, what you do to earn victory points. In this case, it's right here, and Whoever controls this is going to get 3 victory points per turn. Now, first person to get to 12, doesn't matter how they do it, doesn't even matter whose turn it is going to win. There's also additional objectives where you can take over additional points, and that will give you victory points as well. And that's the essence of this game. Also, everybody gets secondary objectives. These are hidden from view for your opponent, but I placed them out here. But at any time, if you fulfill one of these, collide with an enemy plane and only take a flame as a result, well, that's a victory point. And victory points at 12, that could be a big difference. Another one is here, attack the enemy base with only friendly infantry deployed. Okay? That's, if you attack, even if you get them over there and attack them, that's 2 victory points. So, again, these are very situational. Most of the time, your primary objectives are going to give you the best bang for buck on victory points. So we're starting out, and we're actually going to give blue the initiative. And the game goes over in phases. There's this handy chart here. This is what you do when you're hiding what you're going to do with your aerial phase. And you'll see here there's a lot of information for your units, for your airplanes, your aircraft. You've got deployables, information. But the big thing is that you get this. This is the round structure. You choose a building. You can choose, every turn, you get to choose a building to add. Now, you'll notice that I have a lot of units out on the board, and I have a lot of things revealed. Everybody starts off with 6 different unit types. These are locked. Other than the grunts, they're locked. To unlock them, you have to basically put the building in here that unlocks them. And you've got, like, here's the sniper, for example. Let's do that. So I have a sniper. You can tell from this unit that there's a, you place it anywhere, although you might end up trapping yourself. And you've now unlocked the sniper class, which means that you're going to get these 2 guys available to you to be employed. They don't go on the board. They're just available to you to purchase. And so I've done that, and then I can, if I need to remove a building, I can. Sometimes your buildings can get damaged. The enemy can come over and literally pop you. They can come here and they can attack your base, and that equates to damage here, which will harm you in unsavory ways to get you like messed up, so that you can't you can't do employ more snipers, etc. Anyway, that's what's going on. You've done that, and then you add your swill. Now this keeps track of how much swill you have. You'll notice you start with the ability to generate, you started with 6, and then you get the ability to generate 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and also 9, 10. So I have 10 swill at my disposal. I've overshot. I should definitely do a better job of spending, because you can only ever get max 12 swill. Spill a minute. And there we go. We're done with that phase, and we generate swill. We do the same thing on this side. We can add a building, or add an airfield. Let's add an airfield here, and that means that we've now unlocked the plane to be able to be purchased. So there we go. So we've unlocked that. We've done that. Our swill is 5. We're already at max. Again, I didn't do a good job this game of managing my swill consumption. So it wasn't real swill beef. All right. So then we go to the next phase, which is the aerial phase. And this is an entirely different phase than everything else. If you have aerial aircraft, that means your planes or your dirigible, you're going to take the time now to go secretly behind your screen, decide what to do. You can decide at this time you can go back and forth, unless you've got damage, and you can damage all kinds of these, and if you damage all the areas to a degree, they blow up. So yeah, so if these 2 get hit, and then you can only kind of marginally see, but you can actually mess with damaging your opponent's aircraft. And then imagine not being able to go to the right in your aircraft. Anyway, so then you decide, well, I'm going to keep going forward 4. Am I going to go back to 3? Am I going to speed up to 5? The faster you go, the less you can turn. Makes sense. If you're at the highest speed or the lowest speed, you have to take a die roll to see if you get damaged, because if you flying too slow or you're flying too fast, you can mess with things badly. And which direction. Now, looking at my plane, you'll see that I really want to go this way so that I can use some of my attacks. So I will lower my speed to 3, and I am going to go this way. It also means that you have to wait 2 turns before you can go the opposite direction. Think of that. Think of that. So then you reveal, and you go, well, I have speed of 3. Speed of 3 says that I can turn once. Always have to go forward once. 1, turn, 2, 3. Now at this point, I have an attack, but it only goes straight ahead, but it would let me fire from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 distances away. It would let me throw these dice and try and attack a unit. In fact, let's kind of mess with us. Let's do that. So if I was to do that, I would have to take dice. Whee! And I would open the bag with my teeth, like Mama told me not to. And I would roll. Look at this. Look at it. I would roll distance of 1, 2, 3. Distance of 1, 2, 3. I roll 1 green and 3 blues. Now blues are the ranged, and you'll notice that they have little different die configurations. This is a glancing blow, and that counts for half a hit. You have to have 2 of them to actually get a hit. And then you have this, which is a hit. And then you have the explosive die, which is, it doesn't have any glancing blows. It either hits full on or it hits for critical damage. So we're going to roll all 4 of those. And we get, oh, look at that. Woohoo! Look at that. So we have a hit, and then we have 2 glancing blows. So 2 glancing blows turns into 1 hit. And then 2 hits turns into a critical hit. So basically, critical hit just goes up the chain. A critical hit is a hit for 2. The hit points on these puppies are, looks like they're, oh, on the grunts is 2. So bam, he's gone. Goodbye. Take care. Or wait. Yeah, like this isn't a grunt. This is a different kind. What am I? Anyway. All right, I didn't. Anyway, he's out. Goodbye. Take care. And that's how that goes. So that was pretty good. I think our aerial combat phase went well. Yay, happiness. And that's that. And then the other side, of course, would as well. If there's a, well, there isn't really a type. Initiative-wise, the initiative's here. When you play the aerial phase, who gets to go first is going to be controlled by how fast you're going. Or this initiative, like who, yeah, so this decides basically if I have a 4 and an enemy has a ship that's got a 3, then the initiative will be based on that. All right, and that's it. And then we get into the meat of the phase. Once we've done the aerial part, we're going to get into the meat of the game, which is moving the actual ground units. And this is a matter of, I've already started, everybody starts off next to the base, and after that, you go in order from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Whoever has the initiative token is going to get the tiebreaker as far as who goes first. Now you'll notice I don't have the armored car unlocked, so that phase will be skipped. And you'll notice that the engineer is not unlocked, so that will be skipped. No point. So orderly, so 1 to 1. So orderlies get to go first, and they can remove damage. You'll see them here, and they're running around going, hey, I will heal. But there's nothing to heal right now, so we're just going to move him 1. How you know what to do is you get 2 actions, and you can do those with 2 actions. You have implicit actions you can take, and then you have these, anything on the cards you can take. So for 1 action, and the action is the sausage here, the pink sausage, move 1 hex or remove 1 damage from self. Doesn't have any damage, so moving is fine. So can move up to 2. Or can use this to remove all damage from friendly adjacent, or rifle burst within 2. So these are the actions you can do. Any combination of moving using those. You can also implicitly place a deployable. And here we have the engineers have placed a deployable and put construction tokens on it. Once this last construction token is lifted, and one of these engineers would do it on their turn, then you have artillery. Artillery you deploy can be very advantageous to you. You will own it. Unless someone else captures it, because the other action you can do is capture. And what we've done over here is we've gotten this unit over a turn before, and we basically used an action to capture this point, which has given us an extra 3 swill than we would have had otherwise. Why I didn't reflect that on my die, I don't know. 4, 5, 6. Oh, because because some of these buildings take swill. They don't add swill, so that's not 2 swill. All right. So that's what you do. So we've done the orderlies, and then, orderly, and then 2, tiebreaker, the engineer, and this is an engineer. He's got his pipe. No, this is an engineer. He's got his pipe ready to roll. He's going to do that. He's going to, 1 action takes out that, and then it automatically flips it over, and guess what? You now have artillery to be able to pound the enemy with your artillery. And he still has an action left, so he could basically move forward and try and put other deployables out there. So that engine, and all the engineers go. There are other engineers as well. I don't see them here, but oh, this one's here. Yeah, so maybe he'll go this way, take two, and try and go maybe set up as something else over on the other side. Anyway, all right, and the same thing, the orderly is going to move a hex, so all of those orderly units will move. You look up here, he's going to stay there. Then we go to 3, and the grunts. Grunts are always 3, and it always gets pretty easy with the grunts. You're just like, here we go, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Roads are pretty advantageous, especially for armored vehicles. Going into the mountains costs double your movement, so he has to stop here. 1, 2. Can't go into there. 1, 2. There we go. All right. Look at that. Look at that. Are we ready? We're ready for some fighting. And then over on our side, okay, now the grunts move, so they get to do the same thing. They're gonna 1, 2. Let's do 1. Let's do 1. Oh, that traps him, so let's do, I'll go back this way. All right, and there we go. Look at that. And then and that's it for the grunts. And then the snipers. I have snipers unlocked, but I have none deployed. I have no snipers here deployed yet. I don't know why, but if I did, snipers are pretty cool. You can see their range. It's pretty incredible. I was thinking of putting one up on the mountains, because the terrain is actually going to be advantageous. Terrain is handled very simply here. Line of sight, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't. Instead, all you worry about is whenever you're attacking something, whatever it's on has a benefit to the defender. So in this case, if you're in the forests, then your ranged attacks are going to be 1 less. That makes sense. If you're in the mountains, then your explosive attacks are going to be less. I guess you can hide a little better. And yeah. And if you're in these swamps, then your melee range your dice are going to be 1 less. So it's just going to put attackers at a disadvantage whenever they're inside of these areas. That's all they do. You don't have to worry about line of sight rules. Can I see you? Can I not? It's really simplified here. And then I'm not going to go too much farther because we all kind of see it, but you have the snipers, and then the armored cars, and then eventually I will put out Fat Willie. He's a tank. You can see he's got great big cannons and all that. But again, he moves forward 1 hex and he turns. So for his 4 movements, he can either move forward or turn, or he could spend 1 for a cannon, or he can do a barrage, but it costs him 3 actions. So they're slow and lumbering, but powerful. Same thing here with the Iron Hog tank, a little different. 4 actions, 1 action moves forward and back 1 hex, or 1 moves 2 turns. But look at the range on that sucker. So example, we would go move 1, move 1, I could turn 1 and move 1, and that way I'm ready. 1, 2, 3, 4, and the cannons, it can go this way. So you'll see that the range that the cannons can fire out next turn is going to be here. The rear machine gun is going to be back here. So very cool stuff. And everyone's going to move, and there's going to be fighting. I didn't have any attacking yet. I showed you a little bit about the aerial. It would be the same thing. For example, if this was here and I had the actions, I could roll 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I could roll a red and a 2 green dice, and if I did that, then there'd be glancing blow, doesn't do any good, 1 hit, so they take a hit damage, but nothing beyond that. So etc., etc. And that's basically the essence of it. Everybody's going to do that. They're going to do their actions, and then when they're done, they're going to go into the reinforcement phase, and that's when you can spend to finally recruit units. You got all this swill, so you can recruit units back at your base. For example, if I spent 7, I would be able to put this tank here and have it ready to roll as well. Some of the deployables, for example, will let you actually spend a little extra swill, and you can deploy those units up at a place closer to the front, so they can be back in the action better. You can do upgrades. Anytime you want to upgrade, you can just go in and pick one and decide, oh, I want my grunts to have rifle practice. I want to give them the opportunity to have a free extra dice, and so you pay the 4. 5 goes to 1. pay the 4. You can do up to 2 upgrades, and they're instantaneous. And look at that. Now, when I'm in range, not only do I roll 2 dice, I actually get to roll an extra 3rd dice. So you can upgrade the snot out of your units. There's a ton of different upgrades, and that's what you do. And then you can purchase bombs. I didn't show you the dirigible, but the airship parts is pretty cool. You have to wait until you have at least a back, a middle, and a forward on this, and I'll show you that here. Back, a middle, and a forward. There we go. So if you get this set up here, you know, back, middle, forward, then you have what it takes to be able to deploy your dirigible. And it too will move around in the battlefield. It has certain abilities like remove all damage from friendly infantry units adjacent to the airship, and you can do that once a turn for free. Screw tip X, destroy any area vehicle adjacent to the front facing of the airship. If you can pull that off, good on you, mate. And they take damage too. Again, once all of the boxes are filled in for damage, then the airship is destroyed. But notice how much it's going to take to get one of these suckers out there. It's going to take 16 swill. So you're not going to do it on any one turn or whatever, but yeah, that's how that goes. And so that's going on. So there's a lot of things going on here, and all of it comes down to, at the end of the turn, it's like, well, who has victory points? Well, no one's here yet, so no one gets those 3 points. But there's oh, I didn't capture that, but blue gets a victory point, so there you go. So it's taking the lead, and you're going to go round and round. You're going to do these rounds for a ton of time, and eventually someone's going to get to 12 victory points, and they're going to win. And that's just the basics. That's literally just the basics. Once you get into the campaigns, you have a lot more different missions, different examples. You've got they get more and more elaborate and fun and frolicky than as you go along. And there's also the Team Lard expansion, which you have if you have the Kickstarter version, which gives you solo play as well. So I dabbled in that a little bit. I'll give you my final thoughts on that. But that's a rough overview of Hogs of War, of what you're doing. There's so much going on here that definitely hope that the company will do a solid playthrough at some point to show people all of the goodies inside this box. But for now, let's get to my final thoughts on Hogs of War, the miniatures game. Okay, final thoughts on Hogs of War. All right. As always, we go over the cons first, then the pros, and then we do my final summary and thoughts on what I think of this thinky, thoughtful, like bacony goodness thing. So first off, on the cons, there's a couple things. There's a couple things that are just general observations that don't bother me, but you might want to be aware of. Some caveats. The game is a table hog, which is kind of fitting. It takes up a lot of space, so you're not going to be able to play this in a very compact, little tight place. You want to have lots of room to sprawl and spread out. It's also could be a time hog. I do think the game turns take longer than they actually tell you. Even if you're up to speed on the game and you're doing stuff, you have some delicious decisions, and a lot of times you're going to want to take time to think it through and whatever. So consider it the chrono bacon of games. Secondary objectives, you get those, and honestly they seemed a little situational, not entirely easy to employ. Maybe that's intended, I don't know. I mean, they were okay, but I kind of wish there were more objectives that were a little more reachable without having to kind of like deviate. I don't know. Just played enough games of it where I felt like they weren't nearly the same impact that other elements of the game were, but definitely not a demerit on it. It's just they're there. If it happens, well, rock on. Honestly, some of the units, not the tanks, but the actual like human pig units, very kind of similar looking. If you're not careful, you might miss one for the other. So this might be the first time I literally put lipstick on a pig and paint them. That's about it. The other thing is vehicle damage is going to take, it's a bit tricky to unpack how that actually manifests, but once you get it, you understand how thematic it actually is. Those are just nominal things that I would say could have been better. Not even could have been better. Like, if it's a table hog, it's a table hog, you know? What do you do? But there is one sort of sphere of things that I think really presented an impediment to me, and that was, I can break it down into kind of three different veins of it, which is there were three pivotal breakdowns, I think, in onboarding. The manual is pretty scattered. Yes, there's lots of information. Yes, it's pretty entertaining. Lots of good examples, so I can't really fault that. It's just organizationally speaking, there's a lot of questions that just kind of fall through the cracks when you're trying to set things up, and I thought a sense of continuity in that manual would have been better than kind of what they did. You know, you got your FAQ in the back and all that stuff. In some ways, it's almost like you could reduce the size of your FAQ if you just kind of coordinated, this is how you set up, this is how we go through. You know, in some games you have like a, you know, your rule book, and then you sort of have like a play guide that takes you through it. There are bits and pieces of that here, but it didn't really come off in a way that made it easy for me. Once you're not on the very, very most simple examples, there's going to be questions like, what is it? Like deploying when, deploying how, timing, all that stuff. And the thing is, it's do not leave critical information out of the rule book. You know, one of the things I spent time looking for was when you have aircraft, you have their speed, and their speed determines how many turns you can make. Well, that's great, except it's not in the rule book anywhere. You have to go to the hidden player screen, and on the back of it is information, and that's the only place I could find where it actually is. That's inconceivably poor. Don't do that. Give me the information in this book. This is why. This is, yeah. So that's something that was a little annoying. And the thing is, you know, and that's a, you know, annoying but not fatal flaw. The big thing is, I also kind of think, like, over time the design developer presence has been is kind of scant, to be honest with you. I feel like they've kind of moved on to Senjutsu in a lot of ways, and their focus is there. Even as people are starting to roll in and get their copies for the first time, they've kind of, maybe they're, you know, they're leaving the theater, and other people are coming in for the show, and they're like, yeah, you know, we'll do our best, you know, here. Like, I'd love to see a better presence on Board Game Geek for people who are desperately looking for answers, and, you know, they'll get answers here and there, but wouldn't it be great to kind of do a little rush, a little Zerg rush over there, and maybe check every day and at least answer some questions for people? You know, I'm not going to say they're checked out per se, but for the most part, it feels like they're on to the next thing, which is kind of unfortunate. Yeah, I mean, it's, or, you know, I'm going to put together a summary sheet that kind of takes all of the basic things and makes it into one sheet. Maybe I'll share it on Board Game Geek or whatever, you know, so that we don't have so many, don't forget this, or oh, forget that. Again, not fatalistic, but definitely something that could have helped tremendously with the onboarding of people, especially since when you go to look at previews and playthroughs, there's a couple problems with all but one of them. Either they're, you know, clever, but slightly, you know, too overview, or they're just, you know, obsolete. And, you know, there's a couple videos where you're watching guys talk for like half an hour, and then they kind of get to the game a bit, but all the pieces are old, they don't necessarily match. It's clear a lot of iteration was done between those old videos from the Kickstarter and now, and a lot of those are actually kind of almost counter beneficial if you're just wanting to get an answer on what the heck to do. There is one exception, and that is I believe there's an official video done a few months ago by Amy, who was it? Anyway, and I thought that was very well presented, and I think as a general overview, that's great. But I really would still think that it would benefit people to have a playthrough today, modern times, not casual yakking with your friends, but actually going through all of the elements, playing a few turns, showing people how it works. Just play session one, just play the first scenario, and play it with all the things going on with a nice camera, whatever, to show people how it's working. Great job, Amy, and whoever else set it up. I think it was very entertaining. I enjoyed it tremendously. I would like that complemented with an actual serious 2 or 3 player playthrough, showing me how the airship dirigibles work in real life, you know, progress. You know, maybe if you play it correctly, like at least the first 5 turns, then other people will be able to onboard very quickly to that, not just from the overview, which is great, but from seeing it in action. So why does that bother me so much? Well, it wouldn't if this game was average or mediocre or bad or just like so-so. It wouldn't bother me because I would just lump it in with the rest of the things that weren't very impressive. And that's where the problem comes in. So let's get to the pros. This is a game style. This is a game I have been looking for a very long time. This is the type of game that I have a lot of tactical games, a lot of board games, and they're all serious, and they've got lots of rules, and they've got lots of nuances, all that. I just wanted a fun mayhem madcap battle game with serious gameplay, but that doesn't take itself too seriously above that level of gameplay. This answered my call in spades. Like, this is the game. Bless you, Hogs of War. If you don't understand kind of the background of it, go onto YouTube and do Hogs of War PlayStation 1 2000 and watch some gameplay videos. You're going to see kind of the over the top silliness that was present in the PlayStation digital game, and then you're going to see some of the homages and the little touches in there that foreshadow the board game. It's not a direct port. I still think there's a place for that. I honestly wonder if you could do sort of a timed game where you had units and you had like a sand timer and like you have X amount of time to roll dice, sort of like one of those escape real-time games or whatever. But I do see that it tips its hat towards the PC game clearly and evidently. The original, the Hogs of War originals, think of it as a Worms Armageddon style game where you have a certain amount of time for each unit to hunt down crazy things and then do terrible things to your enemies. You can grab health, you grab gear, and if you've got enough time, you walk up to the enemy and shoot a hand cannon into his gizzards. But if you're not careful, you get too close, you run out of time, then you're like, and then you're just sitting duck, you're sitting bacon. This box of Hogs of War is so chock full of content. It is, when I look at the price I paid for it, back when I backed it, versus the content that actually came in the box, this is the second biggest steal of the century. Did you even make money on this? Because it is so filled with content right out of the box. When you see a lot of games coming that are in the same size, but then a third of the box is content, the rest of it is their profits, the invisible profits. It kind of gives you some respect for how much went into this game and how powerfully of a bargain it is to do. Like, Mechs and Minions was a game that came out many years ago that was like $70 and it came in a box this size and stuff. This is close to that. You're going to get content. You're going to get your money's worth if you like it even remotely. There are several different kind of aspects I like. The mini games, it's not true mini games, but kind of a mini game like feel to some of the aspects of this game. For example, dirigibles. Dirigibles are, you're piecing them together. You can make a big dirigible if you want, if you've got the time and the money to do it. Just realize that if you're spending your time in your dirigible and making it all powerful, and the abilities on these things are crazy and powerful, and you're going to be able to find so many permutations of it that it's going to be like mind-boggling. That in itself is like a little mini game. But of course, if you don't deploy it in time, you could wind up like losing before you even get much value out of it. So you got to weigh that trade-off. Base building, which has clearly been iterated on and simplified over what I saw in videos of the past, which I think is okay, because I think maybe there was a fear of bogging down or whatever, but there's still that Tetris-like building your base, and honestly, it's loose enough that you're not going to feel utterly constrained, at least for the first several turns, and you could probably solve that, and figure out what you're going to do. So it's really not going to, I never felt constrained, like, oh man, I just don't have, it's almost like if you play like Planet Unknown or others, it almost would have been cool if they had a way to put things on the map that you had to steer around and shape around, but maybe they tried that and didn't work, because ultimately you're spending time on the map. You don't want to spend all your time on the base building. It's enough. It's an homage to it. It's enough. But it does give you an idea of a custom emphasis of what you want to build. Do you want to focus on these units? Do you want to focus on your economy? Do you want to focus on upgrades or defenses or protection? When it gets attacked, because you can actually go and attack the building on the map and cause damage inside that base, so you got to fix that. But that means taking time away from there's a lot of trade-offs here to think about when you're playing this game. In the economy itself is like you're holding map locations, and so you got to keep holding those to get you can have some intrinsic economy generation, but then you want to hold certain economic objectives too. It drives an offensive-minded game, so you're not going to be bogged down into turtling that much, I don't think. And again, the airships, the airships, all of the airships having their own phase, it really makes them unique. Instead of just throwing it in and going, okay, it's time for the airships to move your same way. The airships are their own phase with their own set of rules and guidelines that you have to follow that aren't as, whereas the other units are all like, yep, you got your 4 action points or whatever, you can do these things. Airships are like, no, we gotta think this through. It really makes it its own custom, unique, and special kind of experience to go like, okay, like I'm moving at 3, I know I'm going fast, do I slow down, do I speed up, I need to turn, I need to line up my shot, but what if they line up there, it's going back and forth. It makes it really cool, and it also employs what I feel like are plausible flight rules. The planes honestly kind of feel more real here than in a lot of other more serious battle game strategy war game fare, to be honest. So, and then the units themselves, the ground units. Each faction is slightly different in what it provides for unit abilities. These sausage actions, very hilarious, quite different. Even in the base cards, the order of activation is different, so you have that too. Like, hey, I want my engineers going first and whatever. Your grunts always go third, but everything else can be like changed a bit, and that can actually have a dramatic effect on how it goes in battle. The upgrades are different per unit type, and there are tons of them, just tons of them. Like you're not going to be bored. We'll get into that in a second. And the unit types themselves are sensible and not just derivative. Like, hey, you got soldier and then better soldier and then better soldier. You got your engineer that expedites deployables. You got your medics. They're like, yeah, power heal. I'm a shaman. And again, to get into the upgrades, each one is packed and they feel powerful, which makes it fun to buy. Everybody can upgrade however they want. They have their own little ways to upgrade. You're not starving someone else by how you do it. These are very smooth to employ by sliding under your card and having them available. Delightfully, mischievously entertaining. Most of these are. And there's multiple uses, so you got, a lot of these action cards, you've got your upgrades, but you got your core abilities, you use your sausage actions. The variety here is massive. That's a beautiful thing. And then we'll get to the deployables. They are owned by no one, so you got to watch out. You got to protect them. But it's nice to kind of set these up at choke points so that you make people go into the forest and around, slow down their movement, mess with them. All of the unique deployables feel good and solid and advantageous. It feels like it feels kind of like a war game when I used to play in a ditch by my house, and you'd build up your structures, get your army men and your tanks, and you'd go, if we had a good Christmas, you can go to Sears Roebuck's catalog and get a battle set and stuff. It's got that same feeling going on in this board, and it feels fantastic. And then for combat is crazy simple, but yet not. You've got your very simple 3 types of dice. You got your ranged, melee, and your explosive damage, and it all works together with that roll-up effect. Where if you've got a nice ranged thing, that's great, but you also have to know that your glancing blows, you have to roll 2 of them into 1 to actually get a hit. So that's kind of a feeling. And then if you get a hit, then you've got to roll 2 regular ones up and to get a critical hit. And so that kind of progression and advancement is it's pretty new. I don't know too many like it, but it works well. It works well to give you help you understand the trade-offs of who you're facing and how you contend against them. And LOS is gone, and I like it. Line of sight is usually something almost all these games have. Are like, oh, center hex to center hex, or if you roll across this. None of that here. It just goes, we don't have time for that. When we don't play that, we're gonna just look. If your range lets you see them, you can fire at them. Well, you ask, then why have terrain at all? Because the terrain actually gives you intrinsic bonuses, actually shown on the actual terrain, so you don't have this lookup chart. There's a few terrain rules about what's impassable, what's not. But in general, you're into the mountains, well, then whoever's attacking you is gonna be rolling 1 less of this type of die that matches that terrain. If you're going into a place where you're gonna be hidden up, well, if you're a ranged person, well, you're gonna roll 1 less dice if you're gonna hit him with a ranged shot. It's simple, it's clean, it's straightforward, and it works. Speaking of clean and straightforward, the unit damage is very clean and straightforward. You know what? It's the typical stuff. Hit points, okay, you're gone, you took your hits. But then you go into the unit damage, and or the vehicle damage, and that's probably the most reasonable real-world summation of vehicle damage I've seen yet, despite being a bit unwieldy to understand first. The idea that you're, oh, I hit damage, so now I roll this vehicle damage. This vehicle damage will do, impede me in my actions, but it also adds flames, which could add, which makes me more susceptible to and stuff. Like, it's really, really clever without adding a ton of extra sub-phases to figuring out damage. And the aerial damage is brilliantly done. Like, if you get hit, certain things are going to break. You have, if you get to choose, but if it's a critical hit, they get to choose the damage. And that could be powerful, because you don't get to just swing around like you normally would. Like, oh man, I can't go right? Are you serious? Like, I can't go right. Oh, I can't slow down? Like, there's a lot. It feels that same, like, fear, that, like, as if you're up there going, oh my gosh, my airlons have been destroyed. Like, anyway, brilliantly done. And the other thing is, there is a large variety of terrain and a large variety of scenarios and objectives. And so, I mean, even if you had one map, the combination of replayability between all the things I've mentioned, the units, the vehicles, the airships, the dirigibles, the deployables, all of that would still allow you a lot of variability. But then they go even further by providing a large quantity of scenarios with different objectives. Heck, you got the pigeon. Like, there's one scenario with a pigeon in it, for crying out loud. Like, yeah. Catch the pigeon, Hamburger Hill, ha ha ha, fortified swine, saving Private Ryan. I mean, these are all really different, really varied conditions, and they're great. And then only that, but then you got your team play, you got your solo play, you got the extra solo faction. This has hundreds of hours of opportunity here, without cheaping out with just the infinite but uninteresting variation where you're like, oh, you can play it 1 billion times. Yeah, but can you have fun 1 billion times? Here, you're going to be playing, if you like this game even at all, at its most basic level, you are going to like this game a lot, over and over and over. And yes, the turns do go long, because this is a long game, but there's also an interweaving of player actions too. You're not activating and going, monolithic player number 1, take all of your turn. Monolithic player 2 did that. You've got everybody does the airships, and then when it's time to activate the units, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's some interweaving here, so that you're not spending, in a 4-player game 75% of the time going, huh, interesting. And everything's balanced. Everything in this game is balanced towards having as much of the regular tactical gameplay as possible that you expect, but wrapped in a frothing burrito of fun. It is just stinking fun. So, in conclusion, Hogs of War has everything. When it arrived, I'm not going to lie to you. When it arrived, it had everything going against it as far as my liking it. It had a hill to climb to convince me that it wasn't just another dud of a KS. It had to climb. It literally climbed the distance between the time it took to back it and when it actually arrived, going, maybe it'll show up someday. It had the terrible mistake from the shipping company that left me with 1/10 of the game for over a month before it actually arrived with everything. It had a pretty poor onboarding experience because of all the issues I ran into when I was trying to get everything going. So when I say that this is a surprise hit, I'm telling you, it had to climb Mount Vesuvius to get to my positivity place. It is everything I was hoping for. I wanted a game like this someday in my collection, and this is the one that it's going to be. It's one of the values of it, it's because it's fictitious, because it's just crazy fictitious fun. It's not tethered to expectations of real world. Everyone knows that in the Great Pork Wars, the 53rd Poultry Division would never have employed, vapor tripe guns in their defensive posture. None of that. It's just all about the fun, crazy, wacky, over-the-top silliness, with a fun, solid baseline for gameplay. It's not a gimmick game. It's not a, minis will save the day. There's a little bit of game in the box, but it's really the minis you have. None of that. It is a game that goes hog wild on the jokes and the theme and the silliness, but underneath it's a fully fleshed out game system, a construction kit of spectacular tactical gaming fun that's beans and frankly one of the most refreshing games I've come across in years. So surprise hit if you get a chance to grab it. For the price, steal of a deal. I'll be keeping this in my collection permanently. No regrets. Anyway, thanks again, and we'll see you next time on Harebrained Games.